All right. So, good morning, Lisa. It's such a pleasure to have you join me on one of these additional interviews. These interviews have been a series that I put together as I'm leading up to my book launch, and finally, I'm actually able to say, this is what the cover is going to look like, which is awesome. And it is currently up on Kickstarter for the next couple of days until March 1st, and looking at leveraging that platform. I'm an entrepreneur. I work with entrepreneurs. It seemed to fit to be out in the trenches, using that as a vehicle for sharing and showcasing the wisdom in the book. So I'm excited that you've joined me because when I was reading up and thinking, what am I going to say in my introduction to Lisa? Obviously, I know you best as a mentor in the Canadian Business Chicks, Boss Chicks mentorship program. So we've worked together in that regard, and I had been kind enough to be able to facilitate your speaking at that event a couple of months ago. So I looked and I saw, as I was doing my research, mother, grandmother, professional speaker, mentor, advisor, serial entrepreneur, community leader, disruptor, 2 times cancer survivor. Where do we start? I mean, this interview is really around the topic of confidence and what you can share from all of your life learnings around how women can increase, elevate their confidence, and what will help them to maintain their confidence so that they don't get knocked off track. And with your experiences, I mean, you're currently a VP of Western Canada for for PMA-Brethour Townley. So you've been working to be building and the marketing of condos both in Western Canada. You've also had many international projects. You're the owner of your own franchise, the Cheap Smokes and Cigars Franchise. You are a speaker in your free time on the weekends as well, entrepreneurial and inspirational speaker. So where would you like to start this conversation? What's contributed, do you think, to the confidence that you have in particular, that you bring forward into all of these adventures that you partake in?
Well, you seem to know so much about me. Oh my God, there's things that I even forgot that you've mentioned. Confidence. I guess I was really lucky. I grew up with a single mom. And so when you're a single parent, you have to always show strength. And so I believe that her strength just kind of trickled. And that's something that I've tried to portray to my 6 kids. We have 3 boys and 3 girls.
Right.
And all of them are confident in their own way. Some of them are introverts, which I am not, which I think also helps you to be confident when you're a little bit more extroverted. And, working with my kids and growing up with a single mom and just being taught that there isn't anything that's impossible. Anything is possible if you set your mind to it. You just have to work hard to get there. And that's the motto I grew up with my mom and my grandmother.
Right.
And in our family, there's only one female every generation. So my mother was it, I am it, and my only natural daughter is it for that generation. And so, we have to fight more because there's so many boys, for everything that we want.
So in that vein, when I see you in person, your energy is definitely a strong energy, yet it's a feminine energy. It's not a masculine energy. And I'm not sure if that's because you've learned how to balance that depending on the situation, when to turn the dial up on the masculine energy and when to turn it up on the feminine.
Well, I think the universe taught me that, to be perfectly honest, Yvonne. I had cancer. I had adrenal cancer quite a few years ago, probably 18, 19 years ago now. And at that time, I was striving so hard to be the top of my field in condo sales and new home sales. And I work with men. Right. And so my masculine energy was really, really strong. And then I got sick. And when that power is taken from you, you start to learn what's really important. And family and friends and balance. And balance for me isn't just about this is my work life and this is my home life. It's about how do I show up every day? When do I need to show up and be strong and powerful? And when do I need to be nurturing and loving?
Yeah.
It's those kind of balances that I was completely out of whack at that time. And it was a really great life lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, obviously. But for those of us that are in business, that have gone through that kind of a life-changing environment, we share that message. And there is no work-life balance. There's no, here's my kids and my family, and here's my job, and I'm going to balance it when you're self-employed, because that's a crock, and we all know that we're self-employed. And so it's more about, when do I need to be soft? When do I need to be super strong? When do I need to stand my ground? Yeah. When can I have a little more give? When do I need to take a little more so that I have what I need so that I can continue to give to others? Yeah. That's more what I mean about life balance versus family time and work time.
Right. And I know that as a mentor in the Boss Chicks program, one of the booklets is the top 10 tips to work-life balance, which is something that I put together as part of building out that program. And I think that there are certain things that we can physically do, mentally do to prepare. And at the end of the day, it's really all about, I believe, what's your intention? And can you carry that forth? Excuse me. Just on thinking, what day was it? Friday. I actually had bought tickets a while ago to see a show that my friend was, it was her play. And with all of the craziness going on of 2 birthdays and family day weekend and Valentine's and my book launch, and then my stepson had a car accident. We had to buy a new car. And I mean, it was a crazy week, 10 days actually. And I completely forgot about these tickets. And the next day when I realized, I was really, really upset, because it was just kind of like the final straw. And hey, I'm human. I have meltdowns too. And I was sitting in the car with my son after Special Olympics bowling, and he's special needs, as you know. And I was crying. I was in tears. I was like, oh, I can't believe I screwed that up. And he looked at me and he said, Mum, maybe when we get home, we should watch the Power of the Heart movie. That will make you feel better. So
as the tears continue.
Exactly, right? And I mean, he's just so intuitive. He's an amazing kid. And so we took the afternoon off. I had some other things planned, but nope, we took the afternoon off. We watched it, and it opened up this amazing conversation between my husband and I that's carried on now for 3 days. And the energy in our house is lifted and is quite a lot lighter because of that. So it is really, I think, about going with the circumstance and saying what's needed so that I can keep my own air mask on first before trying to help others, and what do I need to fuel that. So lovely share, thank you. Also, in terms of words, I mean, the book is about 40 different words, all that are either misused, underutilized, not leveraged enough, words that women say casually that deplete our power. Things like just, oh, I just wanted to blah, blah, blah. I just thought blah, blah, blah. Well, why don't you just say what you thought? Because it diminishes your power if you're just adding some of those extra words in. So some of the book is about concepts and some of it is about specific words. So from your perspective, are there specific words that you see that elevate women in particular, elevate their confidence?
I like the word.
I haven't got them in the book already. We've got a couple of final edits left.
I don't know. I use the word unstoppable, and impossible is possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because the impossible is the word I'm and possible. And so I always think of that when someone says to me, things are impossible, I'm like, no, I'm possible. I've got this. I'll find a way.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my favorites that people don't think about often.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about it in that context, it just gets me going. I want to get going. How do I find this way? How do I find the solution? Where do I go? Who can I talk to?
Yeah.
Because I'm not, I don't have the answer all the time. And I grew up in a generation where we used a manual typewriter. And oh my God, in grade 12, when we got an electric typewriter, it automatically went over. You didn't have to push it anymore. That was like a godsend, right? And then I looked at my kids who Google everything and YouTube stuff and things that weren't possible at that time, but someone, some individual made it possible.
Yeah.
And so I always think of impossible as I'm possible. And what does that look like? And then I try to figure it out.
Love that. Love that. I think there's definitely room to slip that one in. Lines with, I think it's possibility I'm thinking of, but there's, as I said, there's 40 different words in the book. So I will definitely include that one. And then I also think that I had heard a quote from you that I was hoping to include too. I believe all women have inspiration to share, whether it be by sharing their stories of wisdom from lessons they have learned or obstacles they have overcome. Women who have learned the art of checking their ego at the door for the better good of all. Does that ring a bell, that quote? Oh, that sounded rather brilliant. I said that, didn't I? And I would consider you to be, one of the people I put in the unstoppable category. I mean, these interviews, I have tried to select a variety of women who are confident women, powerful in a variety of different ways, influential. You've obviously got a number of successful businesses that you have fostered. I think you had talked about the Cheap Smokes
and Cigars, yeah,
at one of the recent events, and I gather that is doing pretty well. I don't know how many locations you have now.
We have 22, and we started with one little store in 2009 on the Navy What-If.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
So in terms of helping your franchise owners to develop or further develop the confidence to be successful entrepreneurs using your particular model, anything else to add there around confidence, building confidence?
Well, I think that when you start a business, and people who buy into franchises are a little more risk adverse than people like yourself and I that want to jump into the deep end of the pool, will leverage the entire farm to get there because we know that it's going to work because of our own personal determination. And one of the things that we talk about with them is that they're leaving the comfort of their job. So what is it that they want for their life? And they don't think about that. They just think about not having to report to someone that maybe makes them feel lesser than. Right. And that they want to, employ people and give back to their community and really work with them on what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
When you decided to quit that job 9 to 5 weeks of holidays every year, that you're not going to get your first share own in your own business. What does that look like? Let us help you build it.
Yeah.
We do CPRs with our franchisees. And if you don't know what a CPR is, it's context, purpose, and results, right? And we start with what is our result?
Right.
And then, what is the purpose that we're for that result? And then what is the context in which we want to show up?
Right.
And so we use CPR technology with all of our franchisees. And for most of them, they haven't done that kind of work before. So it really, I think, brings out this confidence when they write it out. And then they write it out and they see it. And then we have milestones. And as they get closer to those milestones, they get faster. You start off at the jog, and then the next thing you know is you're sprinting because you're so close. And then you hit it, and you're like, oh my God, what's next? And we have to start again, right? And so we do that annually with our franchisees. Actually, this Saturday is our annual franchise meeting to get realigned and grow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely something to be said for, the future vision and the intention and the purpose. And certainly when I'm working with my clients, the Flourish program that I developed is about visualizing, monetizing, and then optimizing. So the first piece is, what do you envision as success? Like, what does that look like in your life? And particularly as women, for some, it's being able to work 3 days a week. For others, it's going to be able to be, traveling the world and have someone else, paying for that privilege, or to take 3 months off in the summer with their children. So I like to to do sort of that futuristic visioning. I have a little exercise I do, which I won't do on here, but it's basically saying, you know, when I am more confident, I will be able to, and stepping into that vision of what their future self is going to be able to do that they can't do now. So it's really looking forward into, when I am transformed, this is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to feel. This is what I'm doing with that new inspiration. And it's amazing. Sometimes if you can encapsulate it in one word, it's really powerful. I had used the one word concept the last few years. This year, it's actually expansion, but it's also supported by influence and connection. So influence, obviously, getting my message out about the book and sharing the wisdom in the book. And then connection is about, you know, self-connection, staying grounded, and also connecting with a new vibrational level and some new people that are working on different types of initiatives and projects in a different way. So a lot of elevation going on. So in terms of that confidence, anything that you'd like to share from, again, you know, ton of life experience, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on this call, that you've seen that knocks people's confidence out of whack? Some things that maybe are tips to be avoiding, or ideas that, you know.
I have a little trick that I use all the time. And for me, it changes depending on sort of what strikes me at the time. But I always have a power song. And so I have them, and I have them as situational. And so when I've suffered a loss, and usually a loss is more of a setback, because then you just have to find a new way to get to where you need to go.
Yeah. But
sometimes in that moment where you're feeling a little beat up, or someone has told you your idea is dumb, you know, I step into a song, and when I'm driving, I do my I ams. I've been doing I ams for 7-8 years now. And when I stop at a red light, I'm sure the people in the car next to me, if they could actually hear me, think I'm crazy and who the hell is she talking to? But I do say things like, I am confident. I am strong. I am beautiful, and I am worthy. And worthy is the one that gets me every single time. Because we get a lot of that negativity about when we're wanting to grow and cultivate something in our world as an entrepreneur, that people are like, that's never going to work. This is why it's not going to work. And that's because we're risk-averse people. Yeah. And so I say those. And when the light turns green, away I go, and it's over. Yeah. And one of the things, I have a 17-year-old daughter that suffers from anxiety. And I make my kids do it. And if my kids are in the car, they have to do it with me.
Right.
And so sometimes it sounds like, I don't know, some sort of crazy dance rave because everybody's yelling something different. But it only lasts for a minute, you know? And then when we go, by the time, you know, if we've started off and the kids have argued, I want the front seat, she had the front seat last time, and we hit that first stoplight, by the time we hit the next one, it's over. Because we've changed the mindset, and it's about what's good for us. Yeah. And usually it's just 6 or 10, and it works great. And when I'm in my office and I've had a moment, like I had a moment with a supplier yesterday, you know, I put on my song, which is kind of a disappointment song. It's called At My Best, and it's by Machine Gun Kelly, somebody my kid listens to, but I happen to resonate with this song. And it basically says, if you can't accept me at my worst, how do you ever deserve to have me at my very best, at the top of my game? And then it reminds me, okay, so maybe they're having an off day. And maybe what I've requested for them is just one more thing that they feel like they can't deliver, and why. Yeah. And then I listen to that song, and then I pick up the phone, and I'm like, is there something I can do to help you with this? Because we need to work together. Yeah.
I love what you just shared, because it's a reminder that when somebody else is reacting to something that you said, 8 times, I don't know if there's any scientific data out there, but I would say 8 times out of 10 from my experience, it's nothing to do with what I just said. It's something else that's already been happening in their day. And what I just said is like the final straw, and that has now tipped them over the edge. And you're right. It's not about, when something goes wrong, it's about, how do we choose to pick up those pieces again afterwards and go forward with it? Are we going to say, well, that relationship is now trashed and okay, adios? Or are we going to look at, where's the good that could come out of this? And what's going to be, what's going to be the language that will turn it around? And kindness and gratitude works every time. Yeah. I mean, it's not the fact that something goes wrong, it's how we handle it afterwards, especially when it comes to clients, that will either keep the client with us or we'll push them away. So,
and again, it's when you talked about that female energy and that masculine energy. Because when you're in that moment, your masculine energy is stronger. And then when you just take that step back, you can come in more nurturing, and that's that great balance piece again.
Yeah, lovely. And also the piece about lessons. So, when something doesn't necessarily go as planned, some people would say, oh, well, that's a failure then. Well, I look at it and I say there are no mistakes. There are just learning opportunities. There's lessons. So that didn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out. What can you take away from that, and how can you carry those experiences forward and continue to build on it? And that's kind of how the book evolved, actually, because I kept thinking, I kept getting asked the same questions over and over again in my coaching conversations. How do I deal with this? I'm having this challenge, and it was it happened so frequently within a short space of time. It was like, obviously this is not common knowledge, so I better start sharing it with a broader group. So I've committed, in case you didn't have a chance to look at the Kickstarter campaign yet, I've committed to, for every book that is sold upon publication, that I'll be giving a copy away to either a women's foundation, a not-for-profit, or a women's shelter. And I'm hoping that through that approach, that the concepts will be able to help a lot more women. And I certainly, when I picked the cover for it, I was actually doing an interview with Jenny Abdullah-Gulamani, who's the president for BPW across Canada. And I had only actually got this center picture of the blonde lady at the time in mind. And when I finished that interview with her, I was like, oh, shoot, I've got to make sure that I've got diversity covered in the cover. But again, doesn't matter what your size or stature is, male or female, we still have a huge role to play, and we can shift our energy to accommodate that situation. I love what you shared with the I am statements. And when you saw me glance away for a minute, I was chuckling because I just posted yesterday an excerpt from Chapter 7, where I'm talking about negotiating. And one of the action tips at the end, let me just see if I can bring it up really quickly. Oh, I think I probably had it posted already. But it's basically to have that morning mantra, start within and start with I am worthy. And if you've got that firmly embedded before you head out the door, when it comes to negotiating for a job offer or a salary increase or a more responsible role, finishing at your scheduled time of 5 o'clock so you can actually get to daycare on time, it all makes a difference. So that was totally unplanned, but thank you.
But awesome.
Thank you for echoing and endorsing that. So any last lessons? I know that you have a fairly busy day today. I know that for some of my guests, they've actually had something that they particularly wanted to share at the end with the listeners. Any final sort of words of wisdom from a mom, from a mentor, from an entrepreneur, from a speaker perspective, from a cancer survivor perspective? Lisa Mundell-Lawrence, this is your final words for this video. Let's context.
I just think it's really important that every human remembers that every human is an onion. We all have different layers, and our life ebbs and flows every day. So sometimes we're going to have massive wins, and sometimes we're going to have what feels like a massive loss. But, if you can think about the saying, what's happening to me is happening for me, either to teach me a lesson I have yet to learn or to strengthen a weakness I may currently have.
Mm.
And so when situations come up and sometimes they're like, well, why is this happening to me again? It's usually because we didn't learn the lesson the first time.
Yes.
And so it's interesting to me because when I got cancer the first time, I was a Class A workaholic. I slept 4 hours a day, which was perfect for me at the time. When I got cancer the second time, I was back to working 18 hours a day, and I missed the lesson.
Mm.
Now I've been cancer-free for 10 years, and I don't work like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and as a mother, I look at it differently than some. I don't look at more time is better. I look at focused quality time is better than being there but doing the dishes and doing the laundry, because then we're just humans occupying the same space.
Yeah.
And so that part for me is really important. The one-on-one time, the connecting, the asking of the questions, and the really listening. And sometimes I don't like what I hear, and I have to put on my mentor role with my kids and try to, coach them through something in a manner like it's somebody that I'm not attached to, so that I can get it through versus being emotional about it.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do sometimes, especially when you're teenagers or kids. Are your kids, because they don't want to listen. You know everything.
Mm.
And just remember that they're onions too, and what they're going through today, they're not going to go through next week. And to me, that's always, I look at every situation that way. What could be right under the surface?
Yeah.
Or what did they just put back on top to protect themselves? And why do they feel like they need to do that?
Yeah. And I certainly, as a coach, used to use the analogy of, peeling back the onion. And then when I started working more and more with women, it sort of shifted, especially with my branding, when my branding shifted to being like a rose that unfolds. And then in the Power of the Heart movie, I was just reminded again this weekend, there's a lovely segment in the middle where it has a picture of a yellow flower, a daisy. And it talks about when the flower is open, then the bee will come and collect the honey, but not before. It can't force the flower to open.
Yeah.
That was a big lump in the throat moment. Again, it was last time too. So it's about being open. Yeah. And also, I love that you had shared about the balance piece and recognizing the lessons. I don't know that we've really ever talked in detail. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I had the same kind of experience where I burned out because I was chasing big contracts, chasing the money, and had this kick in the stomach moment where I had a male executive for a large oil and gas firm. They'd just gone into this big sale, but they had a harassment issue that they were dealing with. And with my HR background, they'd asked me to come in and do a recommendation on it. And they didn't listen. I'm not going to share any names about, who's who or anything, but they didn't listen to the report findings. And I had spent many hours putting this together. And when he opened the cover, just basically read 2 lines, folded the cover back and pushed it away, and said, thank you for your recommendations. However, we've decided we're going to do this. It was like a kick in the stomach, and it really kicked out, where my values were and why am I doing this kind of work? And that was the beginning of Flourish being born. So moving from that striving, driving mode into a mode of operating with a much more centered self and working with mission-inspired women entrepreneurs, which I love, and a different brand, and the Flourish brand evolved because of that. So it was at the time a bit of a tough lesson because it really knocked me back, and it took me back, I think, because it was strongly connected with some other experiences that happened way earlier when I was 11 and in life, which I won't dig into now, but it brought all those things back to the surface again, and it was a big lesson. So takeaway from that is, use your internal mind chatter to fuel what is externally being verbalized, and look at how you can use that resilience, use those lessons, those learnings to carry on looking forwards and saying, what can I take away from this, and how can I share that with others so that there are some benefits for everybody else in my own pain and learning too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your insights. I certainly look forward to ongoing conversations. And if, with your permission, I would love to actually air this video as part of the launch to the book. I think you've shared some really insightful comments, and particularly focusing on several words that I know are super impactful. So thank you for sharing those. Do I have your permission to?
Absolutely. Anything for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lisa. Have a fabulous day. I'm just going to stop the recording. If you have a moment to just hang on with me, I will stop this. And as far as everyone else watching is concerned, I hope you took away lots of tips from this, and enjoy the video.